In the soft embrace of our modest family home, the air fills with the rich scent of homemade meals, each savory aroma weaving together memories of laughter and warmth. I remember how I held my breath, waiting for his small hand to slip into mine, just as I had always promised to be there for him. My son, Liam, would bound into the room, cheeks flushed with excitement, his energy igniting the dim corners where light hesitated to venture. I recall his laughter echoing in the hallways, a melody that danced with the crackling of the evening fire. Back then, I believed that love was the backbone of family, that nurturing our bond would ensure Liam thrived and blossomed. I sacrificed my own dreams for him, yet those sacrifices defined me in ways I refused to acknowledge. 2 jobs became my routine, waking before dawn, trading my ambition for stability, all to ensure he never felt want. Shifts at the diner merged into late nights cleaning houses, scrubbing floors to put food on the table. But his joy was my reward, an inheritance of pride amassed through years of hardship. I lose myself in the memory of baking cookies every Sunday, the flour dusting my apron like a wintry snowfall. It was our sacred tradition, his small fingers eagerly kneading the dough, wild giggles spilling over as we crafted our edible masterpieces. The kitchen radiated with the warmth of our shared moments, and I often marveled at how easily he turned mundane chores into adventures. "Mom, you're the best," he would exclaim as we tasted our creations, and my heart would swell as if it had found its rightful place in the universe. Those fleeting afternoons filled with the glow of family conversations were my haven. They stitched the fabric of our lives, a tapestry of love, resilience, and trust. My thoughts wandered to the school meetings, where I would sit proudly in the creaky wooden chairs, listening to his teachers praise his progress. I cling to those memories as anchors, for they remind me that this bond is worth every sacrifice. But whispers of negativity flickered around edges of an otherwise bright canvas when he entered adolescence, when the world began to change, and I failed to see the shifting tides, the hints of emotional engagement passing into neglect. My own fears gather like storm clouds in the back of my mind. As I reflect on my past, I realize the power I believed I held was an illusion. Fiercely protective, I did everything I could. I didn't see the early signs of what was to come, the distant expressions in my son's eyes as he began to navigate his newfound independence. I had raised a strong man, but I was now wrestling with the realization that I could easily become a shadow in his life. The fragrant dinners became bittersweet, punctuated with stolen glances toward a future I sensed slipping away, my heart pounding with uncertainty. Still, I would never betray him. I told myself that my love could withstand anything. But as that thought lingers, a knot forms in my stomach. For deep down, I know the upcoming storm might shatter the tranquil facade I had worked so hard to maintain. In this delicate dance of time, little did I know that the arrival of my daughter-in-law would soon become the tipping point, igniting a series of events that would test my resolve and redefine my understanding of family. The day Liam introduced Sophia to us remains etched in my memory, the sunlight streaming through the kitchen window as I prepared for our family gathering. I had baked an assortment of his favorite meals, stuffed shells, garlic bread, and a fresh apple pie cooling on the counter. The comforting scents filled the room, wrapping around me like a warm embrace, a familiar ritual I'd hoped would welcome the new addition to our family. When they arrived, Sophia stepped through the door with an air of confidence, her laughter ringing like silver chimes. She had a charm that radiated warmth, a whirlwind of energy that momentarily filled me with hope. My heart fluttered with the promise of connection, the idea that I could share my son's life with someone so vibrant. But as the evening unfolded, I noticed the subtle shifts in her demeanor, a patronizing glance, a roll of the eyes when I recounted a cherished memory from Liam's childhood. It felt like a veil had slipped, revealing an unsettling undercurrent beneath her bright exterior. "Mom, you really should learn to use the new apps," she had remarked, a grin plastered on her face. "It would make things much easier for you." The words, though wrapped in a light-hearted tone, pierced through me like shards of glass. I nodded, feeling their weight settle across my heart. The laughter from earlier suddenly muted and distant. I brushed it off, convincing myself it was just nerves. But the evening became a montage of moments, small yet potent. As we gathered around the dinner table, the tension weighed heavily in the air, a chill that cut through the warmth of my carefully prepared meal. As the clinking of glasses accompanied bite-sized conversations, I felt myself drift further from the center stage of my son's life. Sophia inserted herself, dominating discussions that once turned seamlessly between Liam and me. I struggled to keep up, her words cloaked in superiority, and those bitter feelings of inadequacy began their slow creep into my heart, almost intoxicating me with doubt. Every forced laugh at her jokes sat like a stone in my stomach. I caught glimpses of the subtle exchanges between them, the way her hand rested possessively on his arm, how he leaned toward her, eyes shining with admiration. This stung, a visceral reminder that my role as the most important woman in his life was being usurped. I watched nervously as the evening progressed, noting how her praises for Liam became both louder and sharper. "Look at him. He gets it all from me," she declared with an exaggerated playful flick of her hair. The laughter that erupted felt like a knife twisting in my side. It should have been joy, but deep down, an unsettling discomfort gnawed at me. Was I being replaced right before my eyes? The signs started to accumulate, a collection of moments I hesitated to confront. Small comments, like Sophia dismissively pointing out my lack of familiarity with trendy kitchen gadgets, led to cold, uncomfortable silences lingering far too long at family dinners. I sensed her intentions lurking beneath the surface like shadows following me home, crowding the love I thought was unwavering. In these gatherings I became hyper-aware of her presence. Her beautiful dress seemed to shine brighter next to my plain blouse. When she laughed, it felt mocking rather than light-hearted. Those tiny afflictions cultivated in the back of my mind, quietly pushing me toward an edge I had never anticipated reaching. Liam appeared oblivious to the discontent brewing under the surface. He smiled at Sophia, completely transfixed while I sat muted, nodding along like a spectator in my own life. The betrayal brewed deeper, a relentless ache growing in my chest. I could no longer hide the gnawing of insecurities that clawed at me. Over the next few months, my fears solidified. Social events became battlegrounds where I found myself declining invitations, dreading shared moments filled with palpable tension, and Sophia's ever-watchful gaze ready to judge and belittle. Yet within me, a whisper of defiance began to grow. It transformed like a flickering flame, urging me on. I had not worked tirelessly for these connections only to watch them break apart at the hands of another woman. This was my family, my son, and I would fight to maintain my place, to solidify the boundaries that allowed our love to flourish. But my heart quaked. How could I voice my concerns? The fear of tearing down the fragile facade we had built together trapped me. Each time I contemplated bringing up my worries, a wave of conflict washed over me. Would Liam believe me? Would he even care? In those moments of self-reflection, tucked away in my little corner of the world, I began to recognize the signs of a brewing storm within me. An awareness was dawning, and I knew I had to brace myself. Something had to change, but for that to happen, I needed to find my voice amidst the quiet chaos. Shall we continue with Block 3? As the weeks turned into months, our family dinners shifted from cherished rituals to tense affairs. The once warm aromas of my cooking felt like they were suffocating me, trapping me in a space charged with discomfort. Dinner announcements that had brought unity became another source of dread. I recall the stifling silence that seemed to hang in the air, punctuated only by the clattering forks and the occasional sound of Sophia's laughter, which often felt like an arrow targeting me. I couldn't shake the sense of alienation as I sat at the table, feeling like a ghost in my own home, observing this new dynamic unfold before me. There was a night I'll never forget. The table gleamed under the chandelier, beautifully set with my best dishes as I poured my heart into every detail. Yet, when the first course was served, Sophia pounced, a predatory glint in her eye. "Oh, you still use that old recipe?" she quipped, casually tossing her hair back. "I'm sure it reminds you of simpler times." Her words dripped with sarcasm, met with polite laughter from Liam, who always seemed to take her side. I felt my stomach tighten, unwanted heat creeping up my neck as their laughter echoed in my ears. The suffocating realization hit me like a wave. I was being pushed out, slowly but surely. I struggled to find the strength to respond, but instead sat entrapped by the lingering sting. Each barb aimed at my choices was a silent humiliation, filled with twisted affection veiled in mockery. In other moments, I'd recount a sweet story about Liam as a child, how he used to bring me wildflowers from our backyard. But just as the warmth of nostalgia enveloped me, Sophia would cut in with a dismissive wave. "Only you could find significance in a dandelion," she remarked, rolling her eyes as if my memories were childish fantasies stripped of value. Each comment she made twisted in my gut like a knife, and I would swallow hard, a lump forming in my throat. I longed to speak up, to claim my space at the table, yet an invisible barrier held me back. It felt as though I had become a spectator in my own life, the audience to unkind reviews spoken about my heart. I began to resent the laughter I had once cherished. Instead, it morphed into a cacophony of insecurity, reminding me of my place beneath Sophia's unrelenting spotlight. The sting of her words often left me feeling parched, desperate for validation, and what cut deeper was Liam's oblivion. He chewed his food, blissfully unaware of the shadows gathering in the corners of our home. His obliviousness gnawed at me more than Sophia's jibes. The thought that my own son, the one I had nurtured through thick and thin, was now lost to me like a dream fading at dawn. He missed the sidelong glances, the subtle tension that filled the air like smoke. It was as if every shared smile between him and Sophia was a dagger slowly carving into the heart of our family. The tension between us grew heavier, and I desperately sought out moments to connect with Liam, to remind him of the bond we shared. Yet every time we stumbled into conversation, my words felt tangled and unsure. I feared those mounting insecurities would spill out and poison the fragile connection I longed to preserve. I spent hours rehearsing what I might say, imagining their reactions, a blazing confrontation or perhaps hesitant acceptance. But every time I approached him, I lost my voice. At home, I retreated to the kitchen, where the familiar sounds of chopping vegetables soothed my battered spirit. The soothing rhythm offered solace while I dug deeper into the crevices of my mind. I would scrub counters until my hands burned, fleeing the muted arguments raging within. Even amidst the sacred rituals of cooking, The specter of humiliation loomed large, casting shadows over what was once my refuge. Perhaps that was why I didn't pay attention to the silent messages around me, the hushed conversations that transpired when Liam and Sophia thought I was too busy. The glances exchanged filled with veiled confusion or contempt regarding my choices. I dismissed my misgivings and pressed them down, tucking those feelings away for another time. But as the days rolled by, the silence in our home grew louder, a symphony of despair building toward a climax. With every meal shared, I could feel the fragile veneer of our family's happiness cracking farther. I would straighten tablecloths and set out fresh flowers, indulging in the hope that those rituals might contain the growing chasm between us. But no matter how hard I tried, I found myself screaming in silence, my anguish stacked against a facade of smiles. And every ounce of love I once held for this family increasingly felt like an anchor dragging me down into a sea of turmoil. I knew I stood at a precipice, watching the distance between my son and me convert into an abyss that threatened to swallow me whole. If I didn't find a way to bridge this ever-widening gap, I feared the small, steady flame that had fueled my dignity would flicker and fade into darkness, leaving only a smoldering pile of resentment behind. Shall we move on to Block 4? As I sat alone in my kitchen, the mid-morning sun casting playful patterns through the window, I couldn't ignore the confusion swirling in my mind any longer. I placed the freshly brewed coffee on the countertop, inhaling the rich aroma as if it might ground me in a tempest of uncertainty. My heart raced with every thought, circling back to Sophia's subtle aggressions and Liam's increasingly distant demeanor. I had begun to see the subtle, clandestine dynamics unraveling between them, the way she leaned into his arm during conversations, allowing her touch to erase our shared history. I felt compelled to investigate, to peel back the layers of manipulation. It was time to piece together their conversations, to unearth the truth masked behind closed doors and coy smiles. As the days turned into restless nights, I found myself in a haze, watching their interactions like some tragic play unfolding before me. Every Sunday dinner turned into a goldmine of information, an emotional minefield where I could gather snippets of their instead sweetened banter. I targeted specific phrases and interactions, hidden beneath layers of derision and dismissiveness. After much internal conflict, I had resolved to keep a journal, a chronicle to expose the shame I had been enduring. My first entry began with Sophia's phrase about my old recipe, and I wrote it down as if naming the shark lurking in my waters. Each entry ranged from nagging comments that would slip through gaps of conversation to the cold glances exchanged when I was oblivious, a tapestry of humiliation woven through our familial fabric. At night I sought refuge within the covers of my bed, where I pored over my notes, repeating my mantra, "They can mute me at the table, never in my heart." The words filled me with a sense of purpose, an emerging defiance paired with the hope that I could reclaim my voice. The journal blossomed, a testament to my observations. It seemed to breathe life into my fading resolve. One morning, with the churning in my gut growing unbearable, I found myself seated at the kitchen island. I stared at a bowl of fruit that had started to gather dust. I was tired of feeling imprisoned by my thoughts. It was time to confront Liam, though the enormity of that thought twisted my stomach into knots. The little moments I'd jotted down felt like bricks while I weighed them against the wall of our relationship. But as the weekend approached, I discovered there was an upcoming family visit planned. Sophia's parents were coming to dinner, a perfect opportunity for illumination and perhaps confrontation. I could feel my nerves tangled inside me, the adrenaline pumping through my veins. While part of me wished for their visit to be splendid, another part began to scheme. What if I could use this opportunity to expose Sophia's manipulations in front of Liam? It felt risky, yet my heart yearned for acknowledgement. On the day of the dinner, I focused intently on the meal, preparing a spread that bounced with color and promise: lasagna, garlic bread, and a salad bursting with bright vegetables. Memories of family gatherings danced in and out, an attempt to recapture the moments I feared were slipping away. I might not have Sophia's flair, but I resolved to establish dominion over my own space there. As the clock ticked closer to 6, I arranged the table beautifully, an expression of my love that lingered like a familiar catchphrase, all the while rehearsing how to introduce light-hearted banter into the evening's anticipatory air. Yet, as I set down the last plate, trepidation crawled into me like a creeping vine. When Sophia's parents finally arrived, cheerful and boisterous, my stomach knotted tightly in rebellion. They seemed to radiate an energy that simultaneously filled our home with joy, while also pushing my insecurities further into the shadows. The contradictions raced through my mind. Could their presence expose the truth akin to a lit flame attracting shadows, or would it illuminate my own place? The dinner began superbly, laughter ringing against the walls, accompanied by indulgent memories reclaimed. Despite my determination to keep control, I could see Sophia subtly working her way back into Liam's affections. She crafted narratives where she, the shimmering figure, effortlessly commanded everyone's attention, reducing my voice to a mere whisper. As wine glasses were passed around, I exchanged furtive glances with Liam, who wore a bright smile of delight directed solely at Sophia. Each time she directed a laugh towards him, it tightened my throat. I thought perhaps the time had come to unleash the carefully laid plans I had been fostering. And then it happened. An unguarded moment slipped between conversations. Sophia placed her hand possessively on Liam's back as she unveiled a story about how they had almost considered moving out of state for his career, something I had not been privy to at all. A weight settled deeply in my chest. It felt like pulsing fury, barely a breath away from spilling over. Someone asked her to elaborate, and at that moment, something within me surged. It was a flash of defiance, an instinct storing all the neglected grievances swirling within me. Actually, Sophia, aren't you forgetting how quickly you ruled out that option? I interjected, my voice razor thin but sharp enough to cut through the surface. The conversation hushed, my heart hammering fiercely in my chest. I didn't care for the moment. There was no retreating now. Her icy smile faltered, allowing the cracks to show, if only for a heartbeat. I pressed on and caught the widening eyes of everyone around the table. After all, you said you couldn't bear to leave your family behind, didn't you? As I acknowledged the tension, a spark ignited from my heart. My challenge carved through the light, and I finally forced out the accumulated smoke, defiantly poised to stand my ground. This was my first taste of reclamation. I could feel my dignity reasserting itself, fear battling through the turmoil, knowing I still had the power to be heard. The air in the room thickened, an electric tension cascading through the space after my words fell heavily upon the assembled crowd. All eyes pivoted between Sophia and me, a palpable suffocation of silence along with the soft clink of forks pausing mid-air. My heart raced violently, a wild drum echoing in my ears as I awaited her response, uncertain of what would unfurl. Sophia's expression flickered like a broken light bulb. Her confident facade momentarily cracked, revealing an irked incredulity that almost took my breath away. "Oh, come on. It was just a suggestion," she retorted, her voice laced with a thin veneer of sweetened sarcasm. Yet the tremor in her words betrayed her irritation. I pressed my lips together, sparing myself from entering into further confrontation. But the spark had ignited something within me. I felt the weight of my insecurities easing. Those careful observations I had documented were now exploding into life, a realization crystallizing within me that I could not return to the shadows any longer. Was it really just a suggestion? I responded softly, quivering with the ferocity of the truth I unleashed. Tension hung heavy, suffocating enough to harvest the silence brewing all around us. Suddenly, my son's voice drew me back. "What are you guys talking about?" Liam interjected, his brow furrowed in bewilderment. His oblivion both emboldened and enraged me more. I met his earnest gaze, frustration churning in my gut like bile as he tried to comprehend the sudden disarray at the table. "This is just family banter," Sophia chimed in, her laughter faltering slightly as her eyes darted to me, searching for any trace of resentment she could exploit. "Right, Mom," she added, her tone dripping with forced lightheartedness. I could feel the fire in me grow. This was a moment that demanded clarity. "Look, Liam, I just wanted to highlight how decisions are often made without including how that impacts our family," I voiced cautiously, leading with gentleness, hoping he would see that I wasn't annihilating their bond, but simply asserting my own. Liam seemed to ponder this, and I grasped at the fleeting hope that, perhaps at this moment, he might hear the words spoken with the weight of 1,000 bruises I had endured silently. "Mom, please," he began to protest, glancing nervously between Sophia and me. "No," I cut him off, the urgency of my growing courage surging forward. "We have to address this now. I've been silent for too long while others have swept over our history, making me feel like an outsider in my own home." Sophia shot me a heated glare, a flicker of her earlier poise cracking under the heaviness I had thrown into the air. "What does that even mean?" she questioned, her laughter wavering. "Are you saying I would exclude you from anything? That's ridiculous." "Is it?" I pushed back, my pulse racing as I caught sight of Liam's incredulity. There was an undeniable shift upon the table, the hurried breaths of everyone around amplifying my resolve. It was like a cauldron beginning to bubble over, and I stood ready with my spoon stirring the ingredients of truth into the boiling pot. "Every time you discuss our family, Sophia, you make it feel like I am second-rate," I pressed on, emboldened by the fire ticking under my skin. "You present memories to him as if you are rewriting the narrative of his life, leaving me with only fragments." Sophia's jaw clenched, her lips pressed tight as the icy mask she wore began to fracture under the scrutiny. As I carved deeper into her defenses, I could sense the audience hanging on the edges of their seats, enthralled by a battle of wills playing out at the dinner table. Liam looked between us both, confused and pained, searching for allies where none existed. "Can we just enjoy dinner?" he asked, his voice strained. But I couldn't relent. This needed to be said, the truth hanging too precariously in the balance. "No, Liam, this is bigger than dinner. This is about our family and how a healthy relationship should work, about what it means to honor each voice," I said, pouring my heart into each syllable. I felt marginalized like a shadow in my other stories, and it must stop. The tension crawled over everyone else sitting at the table. I could read the concern behind Sophia's eyes, how it flickered between amusement and disgust. I could see the facade breaking, and I refused to step back. In that moment, I made a choice. I would no longer let Sophia redefine my place in our family. I straightened my back, and I was ready for the consequences, my spirit unyielding. "What about the lies?" I blurted out, the unexpected veracity of my words startling me. "You reference what's best for Liam and then twist it into suggestions he doesn't even want. while always excluding me. You cast a naive spell over the stories of our family, little by little rewriting our history to fit your narrative. Gasps echoed around our table, eyes darting deeper into the matter at hand as the air filled with murmurings of disbelief. Sophia's face turned a shade paler, her composure slipping, and yet she still couldn't prompt the words she needed to counteract the damning truth. Those stories matter, I stated firmly. Then I drew upon the strength I had gained through my journal, reflecting upon the humiliations that pricked painfully as I pledged to handle the delicate line between us while fighting to reclaim my dignity. I have spent too long standing on the sidelines. You cannot sit here, control the narrative, and erase who I am. Silence reigned, an echo of profound revelation settling in the corners of the dining area. I gazed fervently into Liam's eyes, searching for acknowledgement or connection to a shared history, a window to the bond that wouldn't so easily shatter. Would I ever recover that? I'm not asking you to choose sides, I added, my voice steady, but I'm here to reclaim everything I've worked for, to remind you both that love must encompass all voices. At that moment, something shifted in the room, a realization gently washing over Liam as he took in the true depth of the situation. The confusion in his eyes began to seep away, and I caught a glimmer of understanding. There was no going back now. I stood in the truth, armed with unwavering determination, a steadfast flame in the darkness. Shall we continue the story with Block 6? The silence that followed my declaration was almost deafening. I could feel the weight of anticipation lingering in the air like thick fog suffocating our family gathering. Each face surrounding the table was etched with disbelief. Shock, painted vividly on Sophia's expression, contrasted with the muted surprise on Liam's. My heart raced. I could feel the momentary softness in the air, but knew I had only scratched the surface of what needed to be revealed. Sophia struggled to maintain her composure, a faint smile plastered on her face as she attempted to regain control of the narrative. It's not about erasing you, it's about integrating new ideas, she asserted, her tone lacking the authority she once wielded. I thought we were open to discussion. Her eyes darted between Liam and me, as if probing for other allies. No, Sophia, I replied sharply, my voice laced with the clarity of countless rehearsals. This isn't about new ideas at all. It's about the way you manipulate those ideas to belittle me and twist our family's history. I thought we were stronger than this. I could hear the weight of my words, their ferocity echoing against the kitchen walls. The room felt charged now. It was no longer just an argument, but a confrontation, a reckoning. I was proud. There was finally power in my voice. Liam's expression hardened as he processed the discord between us. He sat slightly forward, tension etched across his brow, grappling with the awareness of the chaos simmering beneath the surface. "What do you mean by that?" he asked, his voice steady, yet confusion laced in the air surrounding his words. He was searching for some semblance of clarity amid the tumult. I took a breath, seizing the opportunity. "Your mother has turned our shared stories into something unrecognizable," I expanded, feeling emboldened with each word. "She takes snippets of the past and crafts a disjointed tale that serves only to elevate her standing, leaving me to be the ghost." I watched the conflict unspool in Liam's expression. A mix of concern and frustration twists around as he searched for a middle ground between loyalty to his mother and understanding my anguish. Sophia's eyes flickered with indignation, yet I could sense her grasp on the narrative slipping. She shifted her weight, her fingers clasping harshly against the table's edge. "I've never tried to erase you. If anything, I encouraged a closer relationship between you and Liam. You're still his mother." The undertone of desperation in her words was tinged with an edge of manipulation. "No, Sophia, "You've tried to replace me," I voiced firmly, keeping my gaze locked onto her, willing her incredulous narrative to falter. "When you constantly compare your life experiences, your taste, your cooking, everything, even unintentional condescension drips from your words. You elevate yourself by diminishing me, and that's where I draw the line." As the words landed, the remnants of resolve she had clung to began to erode, like sand slipping through her fingers. She could no longer deflect the discussion. I could tell she felt it in her bones. There was no anchor against my tidal wave of truth. I had tapped into the strands of reality running through this tangled web. Liam drew in a sharp breath, and for a heartbeat I feared he might retreat, the weight of the confrontation too heavy for him to carry. Instead, a flicker of recognition ignited in his eyes, a key unlocking what lay dormant within him. "Mum, why didn't you say something earlier?" His voice trembled slightly, filled with concern I hadn't expected. "I was afraid, Liam," I admitted, choosing vulnerability as armor against the oncoming storm. "You both painted a vibrant picture of happiness, and I didn't want to ruin it. But in doing so, I let myself be pushed aside, living it in silence." The reality of that admission hung in the air, tangling with the tension but infusing it with a palpable honesty that demanded acknowledgement. At that moment, Sophia's gaze lowered, her fingers still gripping the table, though her smirk faltered entirely. It suddenly felt as if the mask of confidence she had donned began cracking. Vulnerability slipped into the gaps. "Do you really think that's how it's been?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly, revealing her own growing discomfort. "I thought I was helping everyone by suggesting new ways of addressing life after marriage." Her facade had cracked, and now the woman who had wielded her charm like a weapon was wobbling on her heels, exposed, floundering. "Helping by treating me as an intruder in my own life?" I shot back, sadness mingling with fierce defiance. "You've reshaped memories to suit your own narrative without yielding space for the love that exists between us all. I don't want that." As the words flowed from my mouth, I felt a rising tide of courage, spirited strength building from within, exposing the underlying fabric of our shared bonds rather than fraying them further. Liam, weighing the tension, finally took command. "Can we start over?" he asked, projecting gentle resolve. "Mom, tell me how to make this work. How can I fit my family together?" My heart fluttered at that beam of hope. But would it be enough? I glanced at the faces present, measuring their spirits as the evening air grew filled with fragile optimism. "Starting with truth," I suggested, looking directly into Liam's eyes, letting every sentiment pour out of me. "We need to be honest. No more manipulation or control. Just an open dialogue." Sophia's breath quickened, and I could almost see the wheels turning in her mind, resisting this uncharted territory. Yet, as she met my gaze, something shifted in her posture, an acceptance of perhaps needing to loosen the grasp on what she had tried so desperately to claim for herself. I don't want to lose what we have," she replied, voice softer now, stripped of bravado. Her eyes glistened with sincerity. "I was wrong in many ways, and I see that now." It hurt to think I wasn't accepted fully. The tide turned. We were no longer adversaries, but confused and vulnerable human beings grappling to gain control of unfolding destinies. "Then let's be what we always were," I whispered, a small spark of peace settling within me. "Family, where love and truth replace the facades." In that moment, a tentative bond began to reform, a long journey ahead, yet standing united felt like the rebirth of an old warmth I longed to recapture. The path wouldn't be easy, it never was, but together we could navigate it with eyes wide open, ready to reclaim our narrative as a family forged from authenticity, not glamorized role-playing. Ready to move on to Block 7? The air hung heavy with a mix of tension and possibility as we sat around the table, the weight of our recent revelations settling over us. I sensed hesitation lingering. Old wounds and years of misunderstanding were not easily mended. Sophia turned to me, voicing her thoughts quietly. What happens now? There was sincerity in her question, a recognition that our previous facade was no longer sustainable. We begin anew, I replied, gathering the courage to push forward. But it requires openness and honesty from all of us. Liam nodded, his brow furrowed in consideration. How about we set some ground rules? His eyes flicked between Sophia and me, searching for consensus in our fractured dynamic. I like that idea, I replied, my heart flickering with a blend of hope and apprehension. It felt like we were on the edge of something essential, yet the fear of relapse loomed. Let's make a promise to listen without interrupting, Liam suggested, his voice steady. We have to speak from the heart. Yes, I agreed, feeling the weight of his words resonate within me. That means fostering a space where we can express ourselves freely, without the fear of judgment or dismissal. I turned to Sophia. She needed to feel this too. I can work on that, she interjected, sincerity pouring from her tone. I realize now that my approach has often pushed others away rather than bring us closer. I want us to build together. At that moment, I could feel the shift. It wasn't grand or too grandiose, but it was genuine. A crack in the armor we had all worn for so long. Liam looked relieved. Let's share our stories, our past, the good and the bad, he suggested. That way, we can understand where each of us is coming from. Exactly, I emphasized. By examining our history, we can learn to reshape our future. No more ignoring the truth. A warmth spread through me as Sophia nodded in agreement, her earlier bravado replaced by an openness I hadn't expected. I'll share too. I want us to connect on a deeper level. With each shared word, I felt us edging away from the shadows that had long plagued our family. We were no longer adversaries. We were fellow travelers navigating a maze we'd created together. But I couldn't shake the residual doubt. Would this last? Would we hold each other accountable? The balance felt precarious, and I knew we needed to stay vigilant. I also want to promise that we'll check in to see if we're truly sticking to this path, I stated firmly. It's easy to say yes now, but we must uphold our new commitments. I searched Sophia's eyes, seeking trust beneath her veneer of confidence. There was a flicker there, a sign she understood the gravity of what we were doing. Liam chimed in again. I'm committed to making this work. We can lean on each other. If we step on toes, we'll address it directly, okay? There was a palpable shift, a feeling of camaraderie igniting between us. Okay, I concluded, feeling a swell of hope. We're standing at the threshold of something beautiful. The road ahead may be rocky, but we'll journey together. As the conversation unfolded, I felt our collective connection strengthening, the barriers that had been erected slowly crumbling. Little by little, we rose above the fray, lacing our fingers through shared experiences that hugged us tightly. The thread that tied us together felt delicate yet resilient. There was warmth in the air, the kind of warmth that might help ease the shadows cast in our past. It would take time, but I finally believed we could forge a different future. Perhaps this would not just be a moment of disconnected attempts to improve, but a lasting transformation born from trust, compassion, and a commitment to each other as a family. The path ahead was still shrouded in uncertainty, yet it felt brighter than before, like a candle illuminating a previously darkened room. We were ready to step forward, carry the weight of our own truths, and explore the spaces that loved us. Ready to conclude the story with Block 8?